One small step for human and a giant step for bad. Yup. Let's go.
Oh, hey, Vogue.
AD! ¿Qué tal, amigos de GQ?
Here we are. Yes. Today we're with the Leading Fair.
What's up, GQ?
Hola, hola, glamour.
Всем привет. They say that place go crazy, so.
I remember very well the first time I was nominated for an Academy Award.
Don't put on the show! You win the game!
But who got the Grammys? Me.
Where's the studios?
Happy Met, everyone.
Getting ready for the Met Gala.
It's a fashion event when the Biebers arrive. Okay.
That's a long time.
I would go fully insane.
Pido que me ayuden a localizar a mi hermano.
Now it's a big deal.
Am I in the right place? Bring on the next gadget.
No one's allowed to bring anything here.
Okay.
The wallpaper is Ralph Lauren.
I'm gonna take a stand up view, stand up.
Did you lie at any point?
Kind of got really overwhelmed with all of that to the point where I was like, I need to be alone.
El amigo de todo, no amigo de nadie. Cántalo suave. Cómo se hace la clave y el pase la llave para que todo esto se acabe. Todo se cae, todo se sabe. Irak, Haití, Chile combate a liberar este mundo completo si tocan a uno.
See, I speak birds, and they said, that's right, bitch.
Hello everyone and welcome to the world of video. This is the third in our series of webinars. In the first two, we focused on how brands can create competitive advantage through share of culture and data respectively. Cheap data, innovation and distribution, and democratization of content creation and influence has catapulted India to the second largest video market in the world with over 5 billion views every month. Nearly 60% of India's online population consumes video online. From being a YouTube-dominated space to a new generation of independent content creators and aggregators, the industry has come a long way. Leveraging a century of culture-defining journalism from The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, Wired, Vogue, GQ, Architecture Digest, and more. Condé Nast Entertainment is an award-winning global film and television production company and a global digital network and studio distributing entertainment in every format and on all platforms. With 70 plus active feature film, documentary and TV projects in development and production, nearly 40 podcasts and publishing 4,000 plus videos across its global digital network annually. CNE influences audiences around the world with a whopping 13.3 billion views in genres including non-fiction, drama, comedy, animation, branded virtual reality, and live event programming across our iconic brands. Since its inception in 2011, CNE has garnered over 200 nominations and 127 wins, including Academy Awards, Golden Globes, Emmys, Webbies, and ASME Awards. It has produced series for Netflix, Amazon, and feature films with Sony and Fox Searchlight. Closer home, Condé Nast India has produced over 10 shows, spanning multiple seasons for OTT and TV platforms. This include Vogue BFFs for Colors, Feet Up with the Stars for Woot, and more recently, The Big Day for Netflix. Condé Nast's in-house content studio CNX has partnered with brands, influencers, and platforms to produce world-class video content across social, white label video, and long-form formats. More recently, CNX teamed up with Vogue's editors and Facebook to produce over 300 reels for Instagram. Condé Nast is also planning to bring some of its popular video IPs to India under our brand studios. Last year, AD produced its first ever open doors video in India with Sonam Kapoor, the video amassing over 10 million views in just its first week. While the avenues available for building, distributing, and measuring video content are plenty, let's hear perspectives from the creators, publishers, platforms, and brands to understand what strategy will work best for your business. Now let's kick off our opening session, a fireside chat between Raj Nayak and CNE's Ezzy Chidiaphong. Ezzy is the Senior Vice President of Digital Video Local Language, where she oversees all development and programming across Condé Nast's local markets, EMEA, ex-UK, APAC, and LATAM. Raj, of course, needs no introduction. A popular figure in the Indian media and entertainment industry, Raj is a leader, trendsetter, and a motivational powerhouse. His new project, by the way, The House of Cheer, is no laughing matter. Over to you, Raj and Ezzy.
Thank you so much. And Ezzy, such a pleasure to meet you. How are you?
I'm great.
Tell me, what do you do at Condé Nast?
So I am the Senior Vice President of Digital Video for our local markets, which basically means that I oversee our programming and development divisions across about 10 markets, ranging all the way from France all the way across to Mexico and APAC. My drive is kind of overseeing our editorial content, but also our branded content, any kind of sort of branded entertainment, commercial video, white label, providing the programming and development expertise for that as well, so that we can continue to meet our audiences wherever they are.
Wow, that's an exciting job at 10 markets, 10 different markets. And what are the challenges that you face, keeping in mind that there is language differences, cultural differences, and things like that?
It's actually, I know it sort of seems like challenge is the right word, but it's actually not. Like, I'll be honest, one of the greatest joys of my role is I literally get to go on a tour of the world every single day. And, you know, we have the most spirited conversations, and navigating the different cultural nuances is an important feature of what I have to do. But it also means that, you know, we're able to gain those really particular insights across servicing all of the different audiences that we have around the world, because we're a global company, obviously Condé Nast, but we're also extremely hyper-local as well. And I think that's one of the great things about this division, is our ability to form this incredible global network, but actually really still playing to our local strengths as well.
So how many hours of content do you create in a month?
Oh my goodness. I don't have that answer off the top of my head, but it is bazillions. It's like a lot of great content, because we're operating across so many different platforms as well, really speaking to audiences everywhere they are. So, you know, we're programming for our websites, but we're also programming extremely regularly for our YouTube channels. That's a really important part of our business. We're also programming across all the relevant social platforms as well. You know, wherever they spring up, you go to bed every night and there's a new video social platform when you wake up in the morning. We're always making sure that we're one of the first ones to be playing there and engaging our audiences there. So yeah, it's a lot of content on a daily basis.
Okay, so let me rephrase the question slightly. How big is the market?
How big is the market in terms of the ad size, or how big, like how many, you know, in terms of just general sort of viewership? I think, you know, if we think about our YouTube portfolio globally, we're easily doing about 3 billion views monthly, and continuing to grow that very, very aggressively, actually. So it's a pretty big market and a pretty big audience.
Yeah, and how much do you dip into the Condé Nast network for, especially the print network, for your video content?
Oh, I mean, our brands are at the center of everything that we do. That's really the most important part, actually, of our ecosystem. And from a video division, our job is to express the brand through video. So we partner extremely closely with our editorial colleagues. And it's something that I personally take very, very seriously. And it's something that we really strive to make sure is flowing through every sort of strand of DNA of our video content.
You also mentioned branded content, right? I mean, how is the market evolving? I mean, what changes have you seen that's happened in the last 2 years when it comes to branded content?
I actually want to sort of back up and sort of say that I think the idea of sort of branded content and branded entertainment is really important, but I actually really sort of hope that one day in the future, we're not going to necessarily operate in these silos of editorial content over here, branded entertainment over there, because it's all just really good content. It's really good, entertaining content. And that's what I think our viewers are looking for. And I think when you talk about what's changed over the recent years, I think that's something that's come to the epicenter is the audience and the viewers need to have a relationship with the brand and some sort of exchange, from the content. And that's where sort of thinking about the importance of our brands is so important, because that brand affinity is really what the audience is playing for. And I think that's what should be sitting at the heart of branded content. And definitely for us at Condé Nast, it's something that we really try to play to our strengths. We are focused on cultural influence and content innovation and that sort of well of unlimited IP that we can bring to the landscape. And so that all really starts from our ability to tell really, really good stories. And we know that globally around the world, audiences, everyone is looking for a really, really good story. And we make sure that that's at the heart of everything we do when it comes to branded content. That's really where it has to begin.
I completely agree with you, and that's the way it should be. But do you find pushback from advertisers who still haven't evolved to realize that that's what the audience want, and or are they still wanting their brand to be literally in your face within the content?
That's such a good point, and very diplomatically put as well. I think it's a constant sort of there's that constant push and pull, isn't it? And you want to make sure that your client feels like their needs are being met. But realistically speaking, what we sort of try and focus on and what we think the client will be happy with is telling the best stories. And if you're coming to us for branded content rather than white label, specifically, if you're coming for branded content, you're trying to form a partnership with our incredibly iconic brands, which these are some of the most famous brands in the world that have really deep, meaningful connections with their audiences. And making sure that we're telling the story in a way that really impacts that audience, in a way that they will really understand and they will form an emotional connection with, is really, really important to us. And therefore, will make the content better and will make it perform better. So we always really strive to really make sure that our commercial clients are brought along on that journey with us, really come to understand the power of what it is that we do, the power of how we form these connections with our audiences. And we have some of the most incredible award-winning content creators around the world, and our brands trust us for that. Now, it's a very different situation when you're creating a piece of white label content where they're just coming to us as, creative, for our creative excellence, not necessarily looking to have the content on our platform, speaking to our audience, but they want us to help them execute a creative vision that they then want to put on their platforms. There, of course, that's a slightly different conversation, and they might want to push more for a slightly more heavy-handed showing of the brand. But even in that environment, we will still use our expertise and really try and advise them, because we understand what it is to make really, really good content. That's why our audiences keep coming back. That's why the engagement keeps on growing. And we have really good partnerships with our brands. And I think they're starting to really understand that.
So when I think of Condé Nast as an entity, the first thoughts that come to my mind is high-end luxury, travel, and things like that, right? So I just want to know, of all the content that you create, how much of it is in different segments, or is it predominantly only in these two areas?
No, I mean, I think Our audiences are, multidimensional, have multidimensional lives and interests and things that they're sort of looking to experience. And whilst the luxury sector is extremely important to us and something that we're leaning into more and more, and we have a certain level of excellence within that and an understanding and trust that we've built with our audiences for that. We're also really looking at other sectors as well, and we're looking at auto and watches, and there's just such a broadening of opportunity out there, and we want to make sure that we're servicing our audiences for that, and therefore also our clients. And also, when you think about the different platforms, I think where our audiences are actually experiencing this content, we're really, really paying very close attention to that. We talk a lot about the ecosystem here, or you might call it like a multi-platform programming strategy. But we really think about exactly where our audiences are going to be experiencing this content and coming across it, because that's really where they're meeting our brands. And we try and think about what are the verticals that are most relevant for those platforms when we look at the audience, when we look at the age, we look at their interests, and we really make sure that we're programming very effectively across those different platforms. We make sure that we bring that expertise to our relationship with our brands as well, with our brand partners.
I can see you're very passionate about what you do. You're so animated when
I'm too passionate. I can talk about it for like all year long. I love it.
That's what creative people are all about, and it's a nice thing. It's a compliment, actually. So tell me, what is your view on all this short format things like Reel and TikTok, and every day I'm hearing of something new. So what is your view on that, and how much of that kind of content that you create? Very short format.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an extremely important part of the content ecosystem. It always really begins with the audience, and it begins with how they're behaving, where they're consuming content, and what they want to consume. And we always put that at the center of what we're thinking, because that means that we can create the best content possible to serve them and our brands. So short form content is extremely valuable. And it's also not something that it's not that new to us at Condé Nast. Being a fully global organization, China is one of our big markets, and short form content is king there. So we are already excelling at creating that kind of content in those markets, and we're bringing a lot of those best practices across into our other markets, and we're really starting to supercharge original content on these platforms as well. It's really important to us that when we're developing our IP, we're thinking about IP for YouTube, which is it's so valuable to what we do, and it's part of the sort of higher echelons of the content ecosystem that we have, and we excel at creating that sort of serialized, returnable, strong formats that our audiences and therefore brand partners really, really relish and come back for repeatedly. And we're also transferring that skill set across to our short form platforms. There's two ways you can look at it. They would typically be treated as a marketing vehicle, a marketing distribution lane, to drive towards your bigger traffic, towards your bigger videos on main platforms like your website or YouTube. And there's still a lot of value in that. We still lean into that, but we really, really want to be serving these audiences on that platform, original formats as well there that really speak to what we do here at Condé Nast and our ability to develop world-beating IP across these different platforms. Why wouldn't we also apply it to Reels, to TikTok? YouTube Shorts is something that we're doing a lot of now as well.
All the content that you create, what are the different platforms on which you distribute, and which is your biggest platform? If you had to put 1, 2, 3, what would be your biggest platform?
Okay, so I think the first thing, before I answer that question, the first thing to flag is that there are certain markets where there are hyper-local platforms as well. So obviously in China, there are platforms there that we don't operate anywhere else in the world. Weibo, WeChat, Bilibili, Douyin, which is TikTok in the rest of the world. In Russia, we have platforms like VK, Yandex, again, platforms that don't exist outside of those markets. So we have a global operation operational approach for certain platforms, and then a hyper-local one. It's the same way that we operate our content as well. I would say YouTube is probably the number one platform that we are programming for regularly and really sort of bringing that level of creative excellence to. And it's something that we have managed to develop a plethora of phenomenal IP that now means that, you know, is extremely recognizable when people think about our brands, whether it's, you know, Open Door on AD or Beauty Secrets on Vogue or Life and Looks on Vogue. We have a lot of really, really amazing, well recognizable IP on those platforms. Facebook has always historically been a big platform for us when we think about our content in general. But from a video perspective, it's probably not as important as it is when we look at like our print and editorial content properties. It's still something that we have massive engaged audiences on because we need that as a distribution lane for our commercial videos. But we don't find that people are necessarily seeking out the level of originals on that platform as they would be on YouTube. And Instagram and TikTok as well are really, really important for us. Absolutely vital for us. We have huge numbers on Instagram across our brands, you know, across the world, and we are, as you see that consumers are shifting their behaviors on those brands, you know that they're increasingly looking for video. So we're really taking a very video first approach when we look at those platforms.
Do you work with influencers?
Yes.
And what, in your opinion, is the best way to work with influencers and independent content creators?
Influencers are really important. I mean, Condé Nast itself is an influencer. You know, we are constantly culturally defining the landscape. And so we have a very special relationship with influencers across, whether it's across our editorial videos or whether we're partnering with them for our brands. I mean, we have several markets that have sort of influencer incubation programs where we're really sort of nurturing and growing these influencers along with us with their projects. And then we're forming that really deep partnership with them that we can then transfer across for our branded partners as well. But also on the editorial side, we do spend a lot of time working with influencers within certain content categories that are applicable, because we know that our audiences are also interacting with them. And our job is to curate the best experience, the best content, the authority that Condé Nast brings to the table is something that's a really important part of our currency. So even when it comes to working with influencers in a video perspective, we are curating the best influencers to work with. We are bringing them to our audiences as well and making sure that these people who we think have something really relevant to say are able to express that to our audiences.
Excellent. And what do you think is the future trend of video content? Especially in this space. Yeah.
More, I would say. I know that sounds really silly, but it's just going to keep growing. And I think, you know, I was having a conversation with someone about this the other day and saying that there's never going to be a set locked playbook because it's going to be constantly evolving. In the same way as our audiences are constantly evolving in how they consume content, we are moving and leading in that way as well. And I think content itself and video content in particular is really becoming the main form of communication, the main form of storytelling, the main form that we can really build that affinity with our audiences and therefore bring that service to our brands. I think the real question is, where is it going to fall between long form and short form? And is there room for both? I really do think that there's actually room for both, because I think we are really looking.
There's long form, short form, and mini form.
And exactly, mid form, right? Like, and also the way that people categorize that is also quite important as well, because, you know, we obviously have a really burgeoning, exciting film and TV business at Condé Nast as well. But even within digital video, we find that our viewers are looking for long content. They're looking to really sort of lean back and take that content in there. You know, we have videos on YouTube that are running at 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and we're really extending that watch time because we're seeing the engagement from our viewers, we're seeing the comments, and we're seeing them sort of really like to follow that story through to an end. And this is really I think the powerful expertise of our content creating teams who know how to really bring an audience along for the length of a story. I don't see that slowing down. I see that continuing. And as long as we're creating content, I feel that people are passionate about and they're engaged with, that length can run as long as the story is good. But I also think, on the other hand, that the short, meaningful, short form content that really kind of gives you those bite-sized hits are perfectly placed to sort of fit into our really, really busy lives. And there's a certain time of day where you want to kind of consume that snackable content, get what you need for it. But also later on, or at the weekend, or in the evening, or in your lunch break, you might want to lean back and watch a video for an hour. I don't think it has to be one or the other.
Yeah. And you mentioned film and TV. And I remember when I was at Viacom, Condé Nast India had done a show which we had put on one of our channels, a series. And is that something that you are focusing on now, doing stuff for OTT like Amazon and Netflix and things like that?
Yes, that's a really important focus for the business, and we have a phenomenal leader in that part of our business, Helen Easterbrook, who is really mining the business for extremely appealing IP and creating and developing fantastic stories that we're taking to market and taking to streamers. And we have a huge slate of films coming out over this year as well, and even more for the following year. So that's a side of our business that we're extremely excited about. And it's a side of our business that our digital video entity, which is the area that I oversee, is also going to be able to kind of, interact with, because we're really looking at creating the wider ecosystem across all the different verticals of content that we have. So something that might come from Vanity Fair Studios and that might play in a cinema or might play on Netflix, there might also be content, an offshoot of content for that you might see on our YouTube channels or on our O&O website, for which we have, all of our websites are built in with our C&E video player that's serving content out constantly to our audiences. So it's definitely an area that we're really excited in. And our India business has been really championing that for us across the globe. And I've always been in awe of the incredible work that team have done, and they've had shows on Netflix, and we're just sort of looking to them as well to continue to lead the way in that way.
In markets like India, where you have a lot of UGC content and things like that, one of the big things that's emerging is brand safety, right? I mean, all brands are very conscious about brand safety. What's your view on that? What precautions do you take as an organization?
I think it's a really important area for brands and companies to consider. And I think what you're getting when you partner with a business like Condé Nast is an element of that safety has already been thought about. We really spend a lot of time thinking about the content that we're putting out, thinking about how we're expressing our views and how we're communicating with our audience, and really making sure that we're putting the power of our brands in the center of that. But we also spend a lot of time on, on our vetting process for people that we're working with. We really think very selectively about any of the partners or influencers or designers, anyone that we're kind of that we're featuring in our content, to make sure that we're really sort of placing the safety of our brand partners at the focus of what we do. But also we're in control of our audiences as well, right? So, we're able to, if you're bringing a branded content partnership to us and we're running it on our O&O, that you're already within a very safe Condé Nast verified environment. And we've already thought about the talent booking. We've made sure, because that's centrally coordinated, that we're all speaking to each other and we're aware of any potential issues that might be coming up. We've flagged that already and made sure that is not going to be a risk to the brand. We're also tracking our audience data constantly in real time, and we're communicating with our audiences. So we're getting that feedback and making sure that feedback loop is closed. So for us personally, I mean, I know it goes without saying that I would say that, but that brand safety piece is extremely important, but you're never in safer hands than when you're in Condé Nast hands.
Yeah, because even as Condé Nast, you have a reputation to protect, don't you?
100%. Our brands are so vital. I mean, I always say you can't buy branding like we have now. There are hundreds of years of time spent nurturing these brands and nurturing the authority and really creating that very, very unique voice. So it's, to your point, Raj, it's just as important to us to protect that as it is for us to protect our brand partners' brands as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ezzy. It was wonderful speaking with you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for this conversation. I found it really energizing, and hopefully we'll get to talk again soon.
Yes. Take care. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Raj and Ezzy. Moving on, our next session will talk about video landscape and advertising strategies for brands. Video advertising, in its broadest sense, is now a multi-channel medium all on its own. It runs from the traditional 30-second TV spot through addressable TV to online video and branded content. This creates opportunities for marketers to think bigger about new ways of using the medium, about new combination of channels both within and outside the world of video, and also to think smaller about more precise targeting of audiences. The next session will look at the possibilities of the new era of video, as well as the challenges marketers face in realizing its potential. For this session, let's welcome Praveen Saini, Senior Director India and Southeast Asia at Samsung Ads, Bhaskar Ramesh, Director Omnichannel Solutions at Google, Una Davar, Chief Content and Communications Officer at Nykaa Fashion, and Resha Jain, VP Content Marketing at Sugar Cosmetics. Over to you, Prab.
Thank you, Javed. Greetings, audience. Lovely to be here today. We have an exciting panel ahead on a very exciting topic at the same time, which is the digital video landscape and strategies for the brands. This is one area which is gaining a lot of momentum over the last 48 months, being very close to it. And we have panelists who will also tell us what they have been doing in this massive change that we've seen. Today, we have Bhaskar from Google, a former colleague. Good to have you back, Bhaskar. Good to meet you here. We've got Una from Nykaa, and we've got Resha from Sugar Cosmetics. The way we're going to structure our conversation is we're going to set some context as to what we're trying to get at. Then we go into a bit deeper in trying to understand and make this more relevant for you who is watching it. And we'll conclude with a bit of a future gazing in terms of what do we see happening over the next 6 months to 12 months, so that you can go back and take and course correct your strategies for the digital and the video ecosystem. So let me start with the first question, and I keep it open to all my panelists. At any given point in time, how many video platforms are you currently active on?
Hi, Praveer. It's really, really nice to be here, and I'm really excited to learn a lot during the session. I'll take that question first. We are live at any given point of time, at least on 6 different platforms, and 4 always present, but 2 could be something that we are trying, which could be larger partnerships with platforms which are very new to the Indian market and the social landscape, like Moj, Trell, things like that. But we have a constant social presence in at least 4 video platforms, always.
Wow. What about you, Una? Anything that we can hear from Nykaa?
Yeah, sure. So for us, we are probably always on, I would say, 2 or 3, of the bigger platforms. So obviously that would be YouTube, Facebook, IG. We've also started working pretty extensively with OTT partners like Hotstar. For us, I do feel that, which platform we are on, when we are on, et cetera, is also a lot for us determined by the overall objectives and the plans that we have at a point of time. For us, things like TVC and big brand films that we make to drive awareness tend to be largely on TV, but with a strong digital, I would say, build up. We try to almost create like a 360-degree surround sound with any, I would say, hero video content that we create.
Okay.
So with that, we'll make sure that there's a lot of other stuff happening to make sure that we build on that same message, whether it's influencer marketing, our own social media, etc. So I think that's the way we kind of see our thinking and our plans.
Bhaskar, what are your views, given that you work across multiple of clients across industries? I mean, what have you seen in your observation over the last 12 months in this question?
I think the last 18 months had been an explosion of multiple platforms, particularly in short form video is a new phenomena, which adds to the erstwhile giants, like YouTube or even Insta, and all these platforms have taken off. So I'm seeing that most customers are test and learn with all the new folks, while they're trying to do a threshold job with the most of the OTT players, and also trying to do a lot more content first approaches, content first IPs, with established platforms. So I think doing a good job with 1 and 2 and then keep on experimenting with maybe 2 more is the way I'm seeing most customers are trending towards.
So if I have to put that into summary, so on an average, the lower side is about 2 platforms, and Resha is out there with about 6 and more. And what, Bhaskar, you're kind of bringing together that there has been a lot of experimentation, and customer tends to remain in the test and learn bucket as the ecosystem explodes and we have more choices to pick from.
I just want to add, that the legacy platforms of Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, these exist, but now we are working on live video on our own platforms. Yep. We are working with these small short form platforms. And like Una said, of course, a lot of buildup has to be done alongside the video content or a big brand film or any film that we launch. But I think the whole landscape has become huge now.
The choices are plenty and more actually with each passing day, for sure. And which brings me to an interesting question, I think, is both for Una and Resha to pick up. Given the explosion, given that we have, I would say, still a test and learn position, you guys are potentially investing a significant amount of money in creating content and then publicizing that. What are the primary factors that you use to decide which platform you really want to be on? Let's keep the legacy platform out for the second, because I think they have reasonably large user bases and I would say proven metrics, so to say. But let's look at some of the newer ones that you would have potentially explored in the last 48 months. So what made you decide that you would want to go that path and pick them up as part of your strategy?
Prabir, the way we went about it, there were a few platforms that were so big in their reach, and with our audience there, audience makes all the difference. Correct. If your audience is on a platform, you want to go for it and you want to explore and see which way do you connect with them on that platform. It could be a huge influencer thing. It could be a huge hashtag challenge. Like these platforms have their own ways, that they are promoting themselves. So for us, it was largely a game of understanding where do we find audience that resonates with us, whether it's brand building or whether it's conversion, and even to understand which part of the funnel does the platform rest in. So for us, that was the way we went about. Whenever we had something which we wanted to amplify in a big way and we wanted to put money behind, we chose a platform and every time experimented to see what is the ease of working, how are people responding to us. So that was largely the way we approached it.
Yeah, I'd probably, say exactly the same thing as Resha said. For us, sharpness of targeting options, obviously that is one bit. Size of the TG. So quite frankly, the bigger guys, I think, always win out. Of course, you will experiment. And then obviously cost and efficiency of that platform.
And if I have to push you a little bit towards the corner and say, let's make it black and white, what matters most in deciding? It is the audience size, or is it the number of targeting parameters you have?
I wish I could give you like a simple yes, no answer, but I sometimes feel we are very, how do I say, sometimes, even look at the quality of content, or let's say what it is that we want to communicate, right? I think there are just so many variables that we take into account, even while deciding a platform or while deciding where we want to be. So I feel like I'm not trying to answer your question, but it's really not so black and white is the point I'm making.
Rabir, if I'm in the corner, I have to echo it. It's not black and white, but I think as a content marketer, the whole idea has been that it also has to be efficient, because with the kind of scale at which content is being produced right now and, being consumed right now, I think scale becomes important. So when it comes to platforms we want to work with, sometimes with efficiency, it doesn't work out with very small platforms, is what I've noticed, at the end of the day. So larger platforms do win out like that.
So I'm going to park on that efficiency one because that's a very interesting wormhole to go down. And it has, I would say, very different facets of who and what is the definition of efficiency. And it varies depending on who you speak to. So we'll park on that because that's an interesting topic we want to come back to. But just kind of closing the context setting, just want to hear from you, how has the video consumption pattern over the last 2 years specifically changed your strategy? And the context to my question is, historically, it was a standard advertising, which was anywhere between 15 seconds to 30 seconds. And maybe, somebody had a nice story to tell and went into 45, 60 seconds. But now you have clearly a huge selection of platforms to choose from. Each platform has a different definition or duration possibilities. If you go to an Instagram reel, it has a different configuration versus if you go to YouTube as a channel, it has a different configuration versus when you're running ads, as well as when you're watching content on OTT platforms, so on mobile versus on TV or computers as well. So how has all of these consumption patterns between multiple devices and multiple platforms impacted the way you think about content? And then, obviously it would have variation of video, imagery, animation, text, etc. But focusing primarily at videos, how have you gone about simplifying it into a marketing, execution, because that's where a lot of people struggle. So would love to get, each three of you to talk about what have you done to make it work for you.
From my vantage point, let me share how the ecosystem is changing from 3 dimensions, right? The way YouTube looks at it. One is consumers, second is creators, and the third is customers. Yeah. Now, you're absolutely right, Prab. You said like choice, right, has become overwhelming for users, and I think it's a matter of time before the shoe drops on traditional broadcasting kind of platform. I think when a user changes content preferences, it affects advertisers at scale, right? So that is the first point that I would like to mention, that users are making discerning choices now, and exercising their choice has become multifold. The second, from a user's point of view, is if you look at the emergence of short form video, the snacking behavior has increased. New genres emerging because of this. Honestly, learning is the really largest use case on YouTube right now. Gaming has taken off massively on YouTube, like never before, and embracing, even consuming important things like news from these video first kind of platforms. So from our lens, YouTube is not a platform, it is a movement. So I'll pause here, but I think the real challenge is like, how do you simplify, and hence what do you do? And I'll hand it over and keen to listen from Resha and Unan how they're approaching this.
Actually, I agree with everything that Bhaskar said. August 2020, when Reels and Shorts came into the picture, I think it was transformative. Before that, TikTok obviously didn't have a very long run, but the way it was growing in India, short form content was here to stay. Another very big thing with platforms is that I'm seeing that everybody wants to get into social commerce now. How we've seen it is that there is some traditional content where the storytelling has to be respected. So that we do the long form videos on YouTube. And like Bhaskar said, learning is important. We are in an industry of beauty. So with Sugar, we've had a policy of really respecting the channel and the format. Whatever the format decides, it's very clear to see what starts performing. We haven't really replaced anything. It's just been a really big boom in creation as well, because we're creating that much more, and we're really respecting what kind of audience is on what platform and what are they doing there, why are they spending time there? Because intent is very different when a person scrolls Instagram versus when a person goes onto YouTube and searches for something.
Correct.
So we really we are very respectful to the platform and the format, and that's why. But short form is obviously something that has become huge. We definitely see that in respect to other forms of content, we are creating a lot of short form content, including for our own website.
Oh, nice. I could say, not aware to everything that you said, so I'm guessing that's a +1 to what Bhaskar and Resha mentioned.
So one, in terms of, like Resha was saying, for me, it is two questions. One is the kind of content we are making, the quality of content we are making, this combination, like Resha was saying, long form versus short form. Everyone knows what the not everyone, but I think we know what the customers are looking for on YouTube. There is this whole desire to unwind, watch, and be entertained. There is desire to learn something new, utility kind of content. Then there's almost this voyeuristic desire to kind of see what celebs are doing or influencers are doing or things like that. So I think for us, we are constantly creating different content pieces and formats that hopefully appeal to these different viewers and sub-segments within them. And then obviously kind of, really learning, experimenting, doing more. What's interesting for us, at least, and even Resha implied that, is it's not just made for social platforms like our own Insta and YouTube, but embedded into the shopping journey on our website. So just for example, small example, we create small IPs. We know that in fashion and like in beauty, people want to learn and consumers want to know. They often ask, how do I style this? How do I style that? So we've actually created a small, very easy to build small IP called Styling 101s. These are just short 1-minute videos. And now we really use them quite extensively on our own social media handle. And then also, use it on our website and build it into the shopping journey. I think the second part of it is how it impacts your strategy, obviously, in terms of the spends, right? Like, how do you spend that money? Where do you spend it? How do you spend it? So, I mean, obviously, for us, again, I would say Nykaa Fashion, because we are fairly new in the business, a majority of our spends do go to the big guys. I mean, that's the way it is. I think we've added a few like OTT platforms to our portfolio, but a majority of it still continues to be YouTube, Facebook, Insta, and so on and so forth.
So I think that was an interesting view on how each one of you have gone about deciding what content gets played out in what platform. And again, clearly what is emerging out of the conversation is that it's a journey that we're all on. It's emerging. There are too many changes. And you guys are learning on the go, which is definitely very, very exciting and reassuring for anybody else who's following that path. Switching gears a bit and try to go a bit deeper on understanding success, because ultimately, if the boss tells you to spend money, he also comes back and say, how much money have you bought back after spending so much money? So how have you gone about creating methodologies of evaluating success? Either by the content by itself or by the platform. So, you would be evaluating an Instagram differently, an OTT differently, an online social platform differently. So what have you guys done to go back to either your sales leadership or your management to say, okay, we have done this and this is the impact that we have created? Like, we'll love to hear what you're saying. Let's start with Bhaskar, because Bhaskar comes with that, multi-advertiser experience. So Bhaskar, what are you seeing over there?
Think of it like a pyramid, right? At the base of the pyramid is efficiency. Yeah, efficiency in terms of ability to deliver reach and ability to deliver, engagement and movement metrics and all that. So what we are seeing evolved advertisers are doing right now is to leverage the platform scale. Like, for example, connected TV, which I'm sure you are very, very close to. We are seeing almost 40 million users in India, literally like watching YouTube on connected TVs, right? This on the large screen. There is an opportunity to kind of disrupt the premium end of the spectrum by watching the same communication and content on the large screen. Is one way people are seeing great results. On the other end of the spectrum, we are also seeing that given the scale of YouTube, right, even in media dark markets like UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Rajasthan, which are where historically even television penetration is less than 30-40%, YouTube is actually delivering reach which is significantly higher than overall TV. So the ability to deliver reach is driving a lot of ROI for advertisers. That's at the base level. The second layer is from a performance aspect. Earlier, people used to actually only look at it upper funnel metrics, and now there are a lot of consideration being measured through a lot of action campaigns. And if you do any app download as a campaign, and if you look at any of the even discovery kind of a campaigns, video is playing a much larger role in driving that consideration further, right? Which is very visible in the metrics, which are real lower funnel metrics that video is able to deliver, which was not something that it was delivering in the past, and that is improved significantly. Today, there is hardly any app downloads campaign where video is not playing outsized role in influencing that conversion. The third, at the top of the funnel, I would say, is this whole content first, innovations and IPs that people are creating. So content driving curiosity, and curiosity driving being converted by organically is another ROI which is actually happening. And in summary, what we are seeing is, yes, MMMs driving better metrics for video is been the thing of the past, but increasingly it's able to deliver where platforms like TV cannot deliver, which is very measurable, right? It is able to deliver conversions which only erstwhile platforms like search could deliver, and it is able to deliver discovery and like a business metrics, whenever you use content, and not just like an innovation as a platform. So that's the breadth of measurement solutions we are seeing across sectors.
Anything from Una or Resha on this subject?
Well, Prabhu, the way we are going about it, like Bhaskar said, of course, a lot of different things to measure. We look at it as per where in the funnel is the content sitting. Once we understand where it is sitting, it's largely, if it is top funnel, we definitely look at impressions, reach, views, those are very important metrics, engagement. We try and see social mentions, search volume. These are very good indicators of, content performing for top of the funnel awareness. And as we keep coming down, like say when it comes to ads, conversions, of course, CPV, all of these are very important metrics to for us to track traffic. How much traffic are we getting? And of course, end state conversion, we also come down to the content on the website and how it is looking and the experience on the site. But largely, whatever content we put out, depending on the format and where it rests in the funnel and which platform it is on, we try and build our own systems and dashboards.
Very, very similar for us. Depending on the kind of content, the format, and where in the funnel, very similar metrics. Similarly, upper funnel, it's impressions, reach, brand engagement, brand study, brand love, brand trackers. Bottom of the funnel, similar things like app downloads, search, organic app downloads, etc. So very, very similar metrics is what I think we also really use to track, analyze, and kind of learn and reapply.
Yeah. If I may, Prab, come in here, I think videos reach and also videos reach in the audience segments. I think ability to reach is not a challenge anymore. Where the ball drops is actually on the creative. In most cases, if something has not worked, it is not worked probably because of creative and less because of whether the marketer is able to reach or not, particularly across the video ecosystem.
I mean, I would agree. I think at least for us, therefore, that measure for engagement, comments, shares, likes, actually going in and seeing what are the kind of comments that people are making on the thing. I think we try to see how to really work with that, play with that, understand what that is sometimes really telling us.
And if I may, I'll probably go one step deeper because both of you mentioned, let's look at the influencer / creator community. How do you guys go about really leveraging that engagement, because this is definitely something which is on the rise. Many brands are engaging with it. But what has been your learning, and how do you then translate that back into what as a brand you can leverage short term and longer term, because it's a content which will stay there for many months to come? Any specific tips or tricks?
Now, there are two ways to look at influencer community. We think it's a very important community now to nurture and support. And we've had a very, very healthy plan since mid 2019, where we have really nurtured influencers. We work with upwards of 30,000 influencers on different platforms in a year. And we found that we work with them because there is seriously no better way to reach audience in the way that they want to be reached. There is also an element of entertainment, engagement, learning when they get spoken to by these influencers. We have thought, we work with nano influencers, micro influencers, category A influencers, celebrities. And we have found that, of course, with each brand, its own, the amount of money you want to spend on it and have to be able to spend on it will dictate a lot. But it's very easy to measure here the ROI. If we have some idea of earned media value that we are getting from any other place, we are able to track with very, very good SaaS platforms and help now what is the kind of reach a campaign is getting, what are the kind of mentions, what is the kind of engagement. We're able to better track, our efforts and how they're playing out and comparing to a lot of other people's engagements. So it's also helping us strategize it better. It's very easy to see the gaps, to understand how to go about it. I feel like the amount of voice they have and the amount of platforms they have, like Bhaskar was saying, there's so much avenue to make money out of, what they're doing. And this didn't exist a while ago. It's kind of crazy, it's been great for us. For Sugar, it's been one of the key ways that we've differentiated ourselves.
And before Una takes over, I probably would want to add one more follow-up to that question. At what point in time should really one consider, going down the route of partnering with influencers and creators? Because if I put it there, that the new age word of mouth creators for you, and both of you, both Nykaa and Sugar, have been in the market for fair, number of years, operating and doing stuff like this. But if there was let's say a startup, you really want to engage with this community as part of your marketing strategy, should it be the beginning or should it be at the end? And there are different views in the market, but love to get what you have seen, Una, given that you have already been crowned the king of creative partnership.
Nykaa, both beauty and fashion, like Resha said, we work extensively with influencers. So obviously, not starting point, but obviously we work with them for our own social media handle. We work with them for YouTube and, identify and try to figure out which are the right YouTube influencers, whether it's in fashion or beauty or whatever. When I say right YouTube influencers, for us, it is not just their reach and their numbers, but many, many other metrics, the quality of content, the kind of delivery. Do they really know fashion? Will they be respected by the, all those kind of questions also. So that is the second place. Then obviously we work with them as almost like brand collaborators, right? Like maybe co-creating a collection, curating collections, creating curations for us that we again build into the shopping on the website. And then, kind of creating, again, every time we work with, let's say, an A+ influencer, the idea again is to create a surround sound, right? Not just let her do one video, one reel or something, but really try to create a surround sound. Then we work with them, obviously, what we call our Nappers program or our affiliate program. Now, obviously, we've started working with them. We've just started on what we call watch and buy lives. So, they engage on our platform where they'll host a live, quick 20 minutes, talking about products, talking about collection, talking about whatever, and actually engaging with the audience. So I think we work with them, across all our touch points. I would agree that it's been fairly good working with them. I think the challenge is obviously making sure you're finding the right influencer for that messaging, marrying the message, understanding the audience, and then marrying that to the influencer. So let's say, for example, if we want to deliver wider message about the brand and, just driving brand USPs, we'll probably go to a slightly large influencer who has more entertainment value, but make sure that the brand messaging is built into it. So I think there is a lot of thinking, fine-tuning, planning, and then really going ahead and executing, and then hopefully keeping fingers crossed and saying it's actually working with the audience. But yeah, then of course there is the measurement tools, and we try to track it as much as possible and get a feedback loop and things like that. To answer your second question on where in the journey, I would say quite early on in the journey is when you can start to engage with them. But my watch out and caveat is just don't do random stuff. My worry is that there's so much, sorry, I don't know what other word to use, but random stuff going on out there that then you're just scrolling through it thinking like, what the hell is this?
True.
So I think that is where you really need to bring the distinction, well thought through planning, really understanding, and then kind of marry your brand as well as the influencer content and strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I completely echo with what both of you are saying. And then again, if it changes quite dramatically depending on category.
Yeah.
If you go to an auto category, it's very different versus if you go to a phone manufacturer, it's very different.
Yeah.
And it only gets more and more complex. And when you go down to the smaller players, the SME players or the MSME players, it is a different platform selection. They would want to prefer to be their own brand ambassadors, be their own influencers, tend to bring in their friends and families to operate and create opportunities for them. So while we looked at from a very cosmetic lens, I just kind of added up on top of it basis what we see. And then we go into, I mean, just the whole brand discovery process also has changed quite dramatically. I mean, people with big budgets or people with, I would say, pocket money are able to pull through similar levels of impact of their messaging going on these platforms. But I specifically wanted to pick on the influencer subject because it's a very, I would say, niche segment or niche strategy not everybody follows.
No,
Bhaskar, you want to say something?
If you are really marketing to youngsters or even anybody under 35, as I shared with you, they're consuming their news from from video platforms. So it's very, and people are trusting their influencers better than celebrities, and that's a stated fact, right? It's very important to either commit, go back to your business objective, go back to the marketing objective, and decide role of creators here. And if you have a specific objective which you want to have branded content, work with few creators for a more longer time, to build that association. Otherwise, I think the recall is also builds fast, but also you lose it fast.
No, I completely agree with that sentiment, but I'm also trying to address to the broad spectrum of businesses out there. I mean, not everybody is a Maggie or a Lifebuoy. I just want to bring this now to the closure because we've gone through what's really been happening. We've gone a bit deeper into understanding some of these strategies. And knowing that both of you are in the state of experimentation, so there'll be a lot of things that you start doing as things starts to evolve. But as always, as I would say, leaders for the audience to understand is in the next 12 months, what do you think you're going to stop doing from all of this that you've mentioned? Because just listening to you the last half an hour has told, completely, I would say, refresh that marketing is no longer as simple as what they taught us back in my MBA days. It's got more complex, I would say, moving pieces than it ever has, which means focus is of very key importance as more and more things come. So, in your scheme of things, given the complexity that you're already handling, what you might stop something, or you can say, what, I'm pretty comfortable. I'm not going to touch this. Why fix something when it ain't broke? For the next 12 months, we are status quo. But if you had a choice, what would be that one thing that will stop, which will bring some focus back to some of the other things you're doing?
We are in a stage of growth. Last year, actually, we did something which was Clubhouse, which did not scale for us at all. So we've stopped that, But with what we have been experimenting with right now, I think right now, of all the platforms that I've worked with, I don't think I'm in a position to stop anything because we're still in a stage of growth. There's so much more to do. Like we're in a world where NFTs and metaverse is where we are all looking at now. So with all the video content, because conversion is important as well as awareness is important for us, we have a long way to go till the time people recognize us to be a legacy brand, like say a Lakme. And that's what we aspire for everyone to know us, at least. So we are not going to stop unless some platform really does not emerge as useful, which right now I don't think anyone is like there yet.
That's fair. Anything, Una, or you're also like, I'm good, we don't want to stop anything for now?
When you talk to people, they know Nykaa. Everyone knows Nykaa, but they know Nykaa beauty. So I'm looking at it really, really from a Nykaa fashion lens. And if I look at it from that lens, I think we have a long, long way to go in terms of just fundamentals. And yeah, there's lots more to do. So
Bhaskar, I'm sure there'll be lots starting from Google in the next 12 months.
Even if I wear a client hat, I've been a client for a long time. What I will really stop doing is being stuck in this test and learn mode all the time. But I also see a lot of inertia in just being stuck in a test and learn loop and not able to scale what is working dramatically, because the users are ready, the platforms are ready, the scale is there. But that is something that I would love to see more and more marketers break the test and learn loop and scale what is working dramatically. What I would start doing is I would bet on live commerce, and I think that is clearly an idea whose time has come, and hopefully I would like to see more experimentation in that space.
Yeah, it's called the exit of test velocity. So because you got to exit that orbit of tested on. But I think this has been a wonderful conversation. I hope the audience have got a few notes to take away. Definitely enriching and exciting for me, and makes me believe that there is room to grow, given that nobody's stopping anything and people are only starting more stuff. So thank you, Una, Bhaskar, and Resha for this lovely chat.
Thank you, speakers, for sharing those wonderful insights, and thank you, Prab, for leading the conversation. Our last session for today talks about video measurement and about how brands should be tailoring their video playbook to bring out the right ROI and ensuring brand safety. Let me welcome Soumya Mohanty, the MD, the Insights Division at Kantar India, Vishal Jacob, the Chief Digital Officer at Wavemaker, and Rajneesh Kumar, Head of Digital and Direct to Consumer at ITC. Over to you, Soumya.
Thanks, Javeer. And it's great to be hosting this panel discussion on a pretty interesting topic, not a topic that we talk so much about, though it's clearly an area of interest right now for marketers all across, which is about video in action and tailoring your video playbook. And honestly, when I was asked to sort of moderate this session, I read a lot about it, because in our usual day-to-day, when we interact with clients coming from a research agency, we don't get to hear a lot about the role that video plays in the brand funnel, or when we are doing comprehensive campaign assessment. Video is still niche. But when I read about it, I found it's not as niche as I thought it was. It's obviously emerging and booming. And that's not strange, because when I myself go on Facebook, I end up watching only videos. And I also got this interesting fact that in YouTube, we see the world watches over 1 billion hours of YouTube a day. So like amazing stuff. And I hope I'm going to get educated by two experts on the panel, one from Wavemaker and the other from ITC. So it's also an interesting combination of agency and the client side. So that will be interesting. So let me come to the first question that I have. So what do you think is the right metric to focus on when we look at video measurement? And is there in fact a single right metric at all? Is there a single sort of source of truth? So Vishal, maybe start with you.
Sure, I can take that. So when we look at video measurement as such, right, there are some three fundamental questions that we try to address and answer. One, when we do a campaign, essentially, how many people has the video reached out to? Right? That's a very fundamental question. Right? So when you look at the reach number, basically. The second question is, has it really reached out to the right kind of people? right? So there is a certain kind of demography or geography that we want to reach out to, and therefore whether it's in target, right? So that's the second question that we're going to ask. And the third question essentially is, once you reached out to the audience, what's the impact that it has actually made, right? So every video would have a certain action to it, right? A certain outcome that you want to drive, and the outcome could be brand or it could be a business outcome. And across these three questions, there are various metrics that come into play, right? So on reach, obviously there'll be the unified reach that we try to track. When it comes to in target, we try to look at the in target audience and a certain percentage of audiences that is in target, and we try and benchmark it to each of these areas. And when it comes to brand, obviously there's a certain outcome, whether it's a lift in awareness or lift in consideration or lift in purchase intent, or whether it's a really outcome-driven campaign, which could all the way be to sales. So if I were to sum it up, basically, though there is no one metric as such, it really depends on how you look at it, but there has to be a certain filter that one needs to follow. And depending on the business and the or the brand outcome of the campaign, basically we'll arrive at the right kind of metric to that. So that's my point of view on that.
What do you think, Rajneesh? You're on the other side. So how do you?
Yeah, I'm definitely on the other side. Obviously, what Vishal said all makes a lot of sense, and it is exactly true. But coming from the client perspective, I will first look at what is my cost per view. So if my cost per view is low, I can potentially show it to the entire country, and within that, look at groups and all that. Obviously, you are looking at certain kind of targeting and a relevant audience. But the cost per view is lower means you can do more of those videos as well. That means you've hit the right nail and you are able to, get the viewer to view for a longer time. So along with cost per view, so cost per view will be 6 seconds. After that, Facebook will tell you that, okay, this is the cost per view, and this can be taken as a view through rate in terms of the video being watched. But if the view through rate is 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, or 100%. So ideally, again, if I have made a video for a minute or 2 minutes, I would want the audience to be viewing it for the entire 1 minute, which seldom happens. But then I have to see that how many people watched it for the entire 1 minute. Then, so in quartiles, what the view through rate is. Along with that, I will also look at the cost per view. These are the two metrics. Apart from whatever Vishal said is obviously there. But as on the client side, I will look at these two because it becomes important for me. But also from a brand building perspective, because a brand is all about engagement. How many people viewed is a function of how much money you put into many of the times, right? But engagement is something, how many people connected. So what is the function of the brand love? So how many people liked the video and how many people actually commented on the video, and then how many shares I got. So the real creativity, the measurement for me, and that's how I measure good content when it comes to video making itself, is that how many people actually shared, which is actually a function of the virality. So was it share worthy? Was it brag worthy? Did I, get it something on my feed and I shared it with my friends and family on WhatsApp or wherever, I could do it, or I can just share on the same platform. Say, hey guys, watch this video. It's great. Right now, everybody's talking about the Shah Rukh Khan new, thumbs up ad which has come. Now it's a different look, and he's kind of reinvented himself, and that brand has done it for him. And more than the brand itself, people are talking about Shah Rukh Khan as a celebrity, but in the end, the brand thumbs up is being noticed, right? So how do you create a content that becomes a buzz and people start by themselves talking to each other and start sharing it? That's also very important from a creativity perspective. Not really from the media spend perspective. So I will look at view through rate, cost per view, and then how much virality was there, and combined with all this and engagement. So if I have a very viral video which has a lot of engagement, my cost per view is lower, and my view through rate is higher. I think I am very happy with that.
Ideal scenario. It should be viewability, virality, engagement, and at low cost. Pretty much.
Yes. That's the holy
grail.
Yes.
But if you look at video through the marketing funnel, and Rajneesh, maybe we'll start with you this time. First is, I think, the entire digital, when you see from a marketing funnel, especially since you come from ITC, which is large in that sense, not exactly a tech startup, but has to reach a lot of people in a lot of different categories, very mass in that sense. So where do you see the role of video in the brand funnel? What do you see are the objectives that video content fulfills?
So it is my personal view, and I'd not really say that it is the organization's view, but my personal view, doing lots of videos for different brands and all that, and looking after ITC store as the owner of ITC store and that brand. For me, video always is the upper funnel, property, because you are trying to tell a story. Because if nobody knows who you are, then, you can't ask them to click a button and buy the product. First of all, what do you stand for? And in that sense, a video is a great asset to tell the story of the brand, to tell the positioning of the brand. What do we stand for? What is the purpose? What are we trying to do? So you get almost, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 1 minute, whatever time you are making the video. You get that time to tell the story of the brand. And then obviously, because the format is video, you can also have a lot of, push it on YouTube, push it on Facebook, push it on Instagram, and have millions of people watch it. And then based on the engagement that you are getting and the likes, etc., whatever, is the engagement and virality you're getting, that how many people have actually viewed it. So you are almost ready for the next level of engagement. So I think it's more of a awareness, and little bit of intent, depending on what brand you're talking about. But for me, it is a very good tool for awareness and also for intent building.
Interesting. So, Vishal, what do you feel? Is it a top of funnel kind of role that it plays?
Well, I kind of agree to that, but I'd also like to build or rather make my arguments that it can be looked upon as a full funnel, format. Because I've seen a lot. We work with a lot of clients where the intent actually is, like, for instance, to get someone to download an app. If the intent is to get someone to download an app, we've seen some of the videos. If the video acts like a tutorial, for instance, the chances are you would get someone to actually download an app. I agree with Rajesh when he says that it's a storytelling, but the storytelling can also lead to an action, and the action could be like download an app or fill up a form and so on and so forth, right? I mean, so I think more than the question actually that you asked, what role does video actually play in the marketing funnel? I think it can play a role across the funnel, right? That's my point of view. It's the storytelling that really matters. So if the intent is to create awareness about a certain product or a brand, then the storytelling could lead to that. If the intent is to get someone to click on something and drive a certain kind of action, I think there are formats to do that, right? I mean, YouTube has come up with a format to do that. Facebook has come up with a format to do that, right? So I think video as a format can be used across the funnel, and I would also like to say it's not just about the format, it's also an interplay between the audience and the format, right? Because when we look at our campaigns also, we look at people who are in market or in target audience, right? So people who are in market to buy a certain kind of product, if you probably speak to them in a language which is more price point driven, the chances are you'll evoke a better actions with them, right? And someone who's not necessarily exposed to your brand and the objective is awareness, then the way you would communicate to them will be completely different. So the storytelling would depend on the audiences that you're trying to reach. So long story short, essentially, I think it can come through the funnel.
That's very interesting.
Absolutely agree with Vishal. And when I said that it is storytelling more from, if you're talking about a choice that where we want to position, probably I would say that awareness is something that we choose. But let's say you are selling a 500 rupees chocolate, then obviously you want a call to action. In case of ITC store, like he spoke about, Vishal spoke about the app download. So depends upon what exactly you want the video to do. So for ITC store, you will always want a call to action that go and buy, purchase online. Or for app download, you will say, okay, download the app. So it depends upon, but for a large mass brand like chips, which is a 10 rupee packet, you basically know that people may buy it on the in the modern trade, general trade, in the shop next door, or on e-commerce, wherever, right? So there the awareness becomes really the objective, not the CTA or the call to action to purchase right there. So it depends, but I would say largely because it gives you the kind of a space to tell the story. I would say upper funnel, but yes, I agree with Vishal when he says that you can, depending on the purpose you want to achieve or the objective, you can put it anywhere in the funnel.
Yeah, which is actually interesting, because then effectively it plays, it can play a role at every stage of the funnel, then it's pretty much ubiquitous, right? You could use it, which is not the case, let's say, with television, for example. What about the different formats? Vishal, you want to talk about it? The different formats of video, do they play like different role? Because you have all these educational videos, different from, let's say, user created content, and there's this plethora of formats.
Yeah, the thing with formats essentially is that every single platform has got their own formats, right? So if you look at Google, they'll have their own formats. Facebook has got their own formats. I think the point to note essentially is how do you use those formats, right? Every format has got a certain objective that one can yield into, but the storytelling on that format, like for instance, the way you'd use a bumper wouldn't necessarily be a way you'd use, let's say, a carousel on Facebook, right? And making the right kind of content for that ecosystem and yielding that format into a certain kind of an outcome is something that really matters. So in my view, essentially, the starting point essentially is not necessarily the format. The starting point will always be the objective that you want to drive through the campaign, right? And then everything else flows from there. So if the objective is very brand driven or business driven, actually, then it really depends on the audience you want to target, some insights that you let together about the audience, the storytelling that will appeal to that audience, and then you would probably leverage the format that you probably need to kind of drive a certain outcome. So that's the largest story. That's my point of view. It's not necessarily the format essentially, but how you use the format to tell your story and drive a certain outcome is really is one should be looking at.
What do you think, Rajnish? Do you also feel that?
Yeah, I agree with Vishal. I think a very simple way to put it is that once you make a great recipe and a great dish, whether you serve it in a square plate or a round plate doesn't make a difference. It should be tasty. And when somebody tastes it, they should be able to talk good about it. That is important. But coming to the next level, it is not so much the format, but the platform. So when you're serving your film on YouTube versus LinkedIn versus Instagram, and also the kind of cohorts that you're using, to kind of drive that, then you make that differentiation and then serve the content accordingly. I think that is more important to identify the platform and the cohort which is going to watch this particular ad film, right? Format, I do not know how important it is. Obviously, you will be fit to format. You will see that whether it's for mobile or laptop or what is it that you're trying to do. But for me, that is more of a hygiene factor. What is more important is to identify the audience that you are trying, what you intend this ad will serve, and which people will see it, and then which platform is YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. Typically, what kind of audiences is there?
Actually, if I was to take this further, when I was talking about format, I meant stuff like you have a vlogger. So I meant more the user-generated videos. And when brands endorse user-generated videos, is that something that you do, Rajnish? Like have users create their own stuff?
We do, but see, typically user-generated videos are more from engagement perspective. I do not look at the quality of the content because, if I'm saying, okay, you make this video and post it on our platform, then I'm not looking at the quality of the video. I'm just looking at from me, although I may give a prize to somebody who's number one or whatever it is. But for me, it is more of engagement from the user side, not really the quality of the video, because obviously it is limited by, they are typically posting in the comments or they are coming on your website and putting it somewhere where you have given them the place to upload the videos. But the quality usually, and understandably so, is very poor. So I don't care much about that. What I care is that how many people I was able to kind of entice into, making that video and uploading or creating that and, tagging the brand and so on and so forth. I think that is what I would look at from a UGC perspective.
Sure. Vishal, what is your opinion about all these user-created content, which actually has a lot of engagement?
No, I think, I think every single brand is now looking at advocacy in a very serious way, especially in the CPG category, in the beauty category for that matters, right? So I think if you use the right messenger with the right message on the right platform, I think it would yield a very good outcome for our clients. So I think to the point also, while I agree that most, at least if you look at the spend, I think 75 to 80% of the spends would be largely to drive engagement when it comes to user-generated content. But off late, what we're noticing is there's a trend on social commerce, right? So a lot of we're trying to collapse the funnel, where the engagement to sales, is trying to, they're trying to collapse the funnel to quite an extent. And I think it was Bombay Shaving Cream, if I'm not mistaken, that recently came up in ways in which they could use Trell as a platform to kind of create short format videos through the use of influencers to drive certain kind of sales. And I think that's a trend that we're going to see a lot more often, right? So with ShareChat and Trell and all of them going into, with the social platforms driving commerce to a large extent, we're seeing that videos will lead to commerce with a lot of influencers coming in on board. So I think that's an interesting trend to watch out for, Soumya.
And in fact, since you mentioned that, there's something called performance videos, and where you can actually, I think the shoppability element is stronger.
Yeah.
What's the future? Is that something that is getting used here? What's the future of that?
So that's what I said. So essentially, my personal view is that, every video out there has to drive a certain outcome, right? And the outcome, as I mentioned, could be to drive a certain brand lift, or it could be to drive a certain business metric as such, right? The way we tell that message through to that audience is something that needs to have a lot more focus. And I think that's where a lot of clients, some of the clients really get it right. Some of the clients are struggling basically, right? So we've set up a practice called audience sciences. So essentially what we do is we look for signals across various platforms. So we look at signals on Facebook, we look at signals on YouTube, for instance, and try to identify different audience cohorts, which clients can then bucket and then personalize the communication to. Right. So someone who's like a fitness enthusiast may want a certain kind of communication which might appeal to him, compared to someone who's like a couch potato, for instance, right? So and you want to reach out to the same type of audiences, but if your product is very mass, but the way you talk to them will be a lot more different. And essentially the whole thought of identifying audiences and creating cohorts and then coming up with the right kind of communication, which coupled with the right format with a certain call to action. If you can get all these three things right, basically, then the chances are you will drive performance for sure. Now, the performance could be, like I said, to drive a certain lift in brand, or it could be to drive a lift in a certain business metric. The other thing to note over here essentially is also the second point is that the way or the nuances in which we try to drive performance to video is now going up quite a bit, right? So with Google launching its data clean room and the way we can use ADH, for instance, today is something which we never could use maybe a couple of years back, right? So the way in which we look at log level data, event level data, and analyze the data and come up with insights around how a campaign can perform better in the future is something that is something that can aid a lot to the performance that we drive in our campaigns. So yes, the story is yes, the formats do matter as far as performance is concerned, but it's getting the format right alone will not necessarily help you if you don't get the other aspects of the campaign right.
Rajesh, what do you feel about it? I mean, when Vishal goes to you and gives this entire thing, I mean, this entire narrative, are there anything that as a on the other side, as a client, you would like to question? Because this is almost...
No, I think what he said is something we've been doing day in, day out. So I think both of us are on the same page. So just to add a little bit of information, which I learned a few days ago, Sunday, we had this event, which is live commerce, which is shoppable commerce. And I didn't know that, it is big in China and US. We read about it, but it was the first time we did for ITC store. And some 17,500, those kind of numbers were there. The people who watched the entire event. It was chefs on one side and musicians on the other, and there was a celebrity guest. And 2 hours people were watching it. Although I thought, there will be hardly any audience, and why will people watch? And within that, we were popping up the products, and then people were adding it to the cart. And finally the discount code appeared, and then they used the discount code to check out and all that. Now that is something very, very different in terms of, I think that is where the the commerce, especially part of it, and live commerce is going to be. Because if you are watching something interesting and the product is embedded into that, which is what you're watching, and then you find the usage of the product, and then immediately, and I've seen these metrics, I do not know how far they're true, but at least that those are being claimed that the CTRs are like 5 or 6% times higher on video commerce when somebody has watched it and the product is there. For example, beauty is a large category within that. If you're watching somebody, who's putting an eyeliner or, lipstick or whatever it is, but then if you have the product right there, which this person is using, the CTR or, is 4 to 5 times more because you've just watched somebody using it, you're interested and you click on it, you add to the cart. So I think this is the direction where, your whole video experience, where you're saying, okay, video is something, product is something, commerce is something else. You merge everything and then you say, okay, here's the video, here's the commerce, and here's where you buy, and this is, by the way, the coupon code. So immediately go ahead and do it. I think that's a very interesting direction, apart from whatever Vishal said, is also something that we are seeing.
So just to build on that also, right? Another interesting point to note essentially is that digital, when you look at online video, essentially, it's always a lean forward medium, right? Traditionally, you go and search and you consume the content that you want, and brands try to be contextually relevant wherever possible, essentially. So while you look at a lean forward medium, essentially, as Rajesh was mentioning, the funnel or the time taken from creating awareness to creating a consideration to actually making a purchase can now really be collapsed quite an extent, right? You can't do that on television, for instance. You can't do that in any other medium essentially. So just to add on to Rajnish's point, that's a very critical element that marketers really need to understand, right? So when you're looking at video as an element, when you can actually create a campaign where you can actually create awareness about a product to conversion, and also make it very linear, and at the same time ensure that the linearity is brought down to a very short time. And I think that's a very interesting point that a lot of marketers are now starting to realize as live commerce comes into picture, conversational commerce comes into picture, and so on and so forth. Right? So this entire piece on social commerce will really disrupt the way people start looking at video.
Yeah, it's essentially
at the same time that the chef is actually making the recipe. People are asking that what is the recipe, where can I have it? Are you going to post on your handles, right? And do I put more salt or less salt? Those kind of questions just tell you that how engaged the audience and that's the right time for the product to pop up and for them to add it to the cart and check out with a discount code. So I think that collapsing of the entire thing, that's something very, very interesting. Since we are talking about the video, now that is something you can do in a video. In a static, you can't do it. In any other format, you can't do it. If you have a live video and a product demonstration is happening and the audience is engaged, because the relevance is also built in. If I'm interested in food and recipes, then only I'm watching. If I'm interested in beauty, then only I'm watching. So you have the relevance of the audience watching the right video and from a probably an expert or an influencer. And then within that, you give them an opportunity to add the cart, add the product to the cart, and then check out. I think that is the collapsing of that's what we want to do actually. But right now everything was so separated. I think this is going to grow a lot, even in India, as it has kind of boomed.
We are saying contextually relevant, good storytelling, driving engagement, making everything shoppable fundamentally, right? Which is fair. I mean, the last question I have is around brand safety. I guess this is more to do with how it gets used once it's out there, and also about user-generated content which you end up endorsing. How big is that as an issue? I mean, is it an issue at all? Are there guardrails that you use?
I'd like Rajnish to go for this one first.
No, I think for us it's Wavemaker. So we trust Wavemaker on that. My answer to that will be Wavemaker. We trust. So I think Vishal is a better one to answer that. But obviously we define the guardrails together and all that. But yes.
Yeah, sure. So on the brand safety part, right? I mean, there are two parts to it. One is we look at negations, whether it's in platform, right? So for instance, when you look at YouTube, right? So there are ways in which we can actually select what kind of channels of the content that we want to be present in. We look at search queries, for instance, and we put negations on that. So that's one what we can do on a platform basis. Then there are tools which we use, like so we use IAS, we use Moat, mFiltrate, and so on and so forth. There are multiple such tools that are currently. DV also is there. So and these tools obviously will scan the pages and obviously try and negate the ones that we've considered as the ones which are not necessarily safe for us. Right now, in fact, just yesterday we had to add in the Russia and the Ukraine into the list, basically. Right, so a lot of brands don't want to be present or associated with the Russia-Ukraine issues. So across news sites, basically, whoever is covering it, there are very few brands that are actually being associated with this. So the viewership has gone up quite a bit. But you see a lot of brands, especially the international brands, are very, very conscious that they don't necessarily want to be associated with any of this kind of content. So yeah, so that's the story. So negations as far as possible, and then use automated tools to kind of ensure that.
Let me ask you a slightly provocative question. Therefore, I mean, is that level of filtering enough, or do you need a human filtering? Because some of that.
That's what I meant. So the human filtering part is when you do the negations at your end, right? So when you go to a platform and you negate certain kind of content, which is the kind of keyword searches that people make or the kind of channels that people browse. So that's the human filtering that actually happens. And over and above that, we can also use tools, what I mentioned.
Okay, cool. I actually think we have covered quite a bit in our conversation, and we should be out of time. But are there any last thoughts around this, Rajnish and Vishal, in terms of, maybe we'll go with you, Rajnish. How do you see this? Do you see video becoming how do you see marketing spends shifting towards video? Because as I said, we still don't get briefs which have got video as an integral part of campaign assessment. It's still mostly television and digital, but not exactly video in the way video is looked at in its totality.
So video has already become very, very big. I think that goes without saying. Everybody in the, either you are in the marketing world or you are part of the brand, or you are just an audience and user, like you said in the beginning, that how much video you end up consuming. If you look at Facebook, I mean, they have reels, they have so many different formats, and they are promoting video, like, because that's what is being consumed. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, nobody is watching Prime, nobody is watching Netflix, nobody was binge watching, series and so on and so forth. And also last 2 years, when you were, kind of confined in your home, a lot of that habit of, watching video and content, YouTube, because that throws you the content that is relevant to you. So I think generally the, audience has shifted towards the video in terms of the preference, and they are watching different things. Now, when people say the attention span is 18 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds and it's a gold, I don't agree with all that, because, we end up consuming and binge watching series which are like 30 hours of content. Yeah. So if you have a story to tell, I think people are now ready, and video has become very, very strong. And all brands should look at video as a medium to tell their story. And don't, I mean, obviously it can't be 1 hour, but don't get kind of stressed out in terms of the timing. Look at the right time in which you can tell the story. Typically 30 seconds, 20 seconds attention span is good enough. But if it goes to 2 minutes and your story is still strong, go ahead and tell it. I think it will still happen, right? And video will rule for a long time, I think, in another 2-3 years, till we have the metaverse and all of us are talking in avatars rather than, this is also video actually.
So, Vishal, you have any last thoughts on this?
Yeah. See, I think that I'm first of all, Soumya, I'm really surprised that you're not getting enough briefs on video. Okay, because if you look at the TYNY report, right, the this year next year report, digital addicts is actually going to take over television addicts this year. Right? That's a forecast for this year. Not just us, but even a couple of other reports have also mentioned that. Right. So I think online video is definitely going to be the future, right? And not because of just reach, right? I think there are things that you can do with it essentially, right? Every single client wants outcomes from the campaigns that they drive, and you can actually measure it full funnel, like I mentioned, right? So the only challenge that I see essentially is that the storytelling is not as simple as it is on television. Like you make a 30-second and you run it, right? Because it doesn't work like that over here. So you may need to use tools, and these tools could be like DCO tools, for instance, which could help you target and create personalized communication for different sets of audiences. But if you do it right, then the outcome is there to be seen, right? And I think that's the story that I'd like to leave here with. Basically, essentially, that it's definitely the future. And the digital addicts and the consumers are obviously consuming a lot more. And if you look at the number of cord cutters, also they're actually going up, right? So online video is definitely going to be the future. And just to the point on the metaverse and all that, I think making the content a lot more experiential is probably the future of video. So while you create video across various formats and all, but there is the entire element of how do you make it far more experiential, and that as the internet speeds get better and as the computers become a lot more faster in processing and 3D animations become a lot more mainstream, you'll see that essentially this is going to be the future.
No, absolutely. And in fact, if I was to just summarize this, there are two big things that seem to be happening. One is the fact, I think what you mentioned about the collapsing of the funnel and the ability to actually do all of it from the start to the end and be able to measure it. I think that's why video is going to be the future. And the second, what you mentioned, Vishal, finally, it is the classical creativity or classical marketing, right? I mean, you have to tell a good story, you have to engage the viewer, you have to make it viral, and you have to lead to some action, which could be at any point in the funnel. So it's in some sense old and the new, right? It always comes together. Though I do hope we still go out of the online world and we are still going to the stores and still meeting each other. It's like experience in real life and experiential content on screen. Both probably will sort of come together. So thank you. And it was real pleasure. And it was, I learned a lot, and I hope we get more briefs around it. But yeah, thanks. Thank you, Vishal. And thank you, Rajneesh.
Thanks, Soumya. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Soumya. Thanks, Vishal. Lovely interacting with you.
Thank you all for sharing your insights and recommendations on how to really tailor your measurement strategies for video marketing, which after today's session, I feel is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of potential. I'd like to give another big round of thanks to all our speakers and a huge shout out to our wonderful audience for joining us today. In case you have any questions for us or you would like to connect, please write into our team. Have a great evening and stay safe.